What a beautiful day. It's unbelievable. I'm here today at Haveringland Hall Lakes. It's really set in the heart of Norfolk, in the Norfolk countryside, right in wooded areas, but it's only about 10 miles north of Norwich. But it's beautiful, it's quiet, it's peaceful, the birds are singing. The lake itself is about, I would think, 10 or 12 acres, but it's very, very shallow. And there's some big bream in here, some good bream, 4 or 5 pounders, odd tench, and some lovely roach as well. And I thought this would be an ideal location to come and actually go through all the techniques of stillwater feeder fishing. You know, how to feed. In feeder fishing, there's lots of little segments that you need to know, you know, the ground bait, the exact way that you set your tackle up, the right rods, the right tips. You need to know all these things, and you need to key them all together, you know, to be really successful at feeder fishing. You need to key all these little parts together like a jigsaw puzzle, just to make everything work. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to do today. Now really, when you get to the bankside, if you're feeder fishing, one of the most important things is your ground bait, and that's the first job that you need to do. You need to get some water on the ground bait, because it takes, usually you have to put water in and leave it to settle and add a little bit more, you know, so it takes a little while to prepare it correctly. So that's usually my first job, get to the bank and get some ground bait mix. Now, and also the mix that you use is very important. This is a very shallow lake, probably about 1 metre deep, very, very shallow, so I want a very light, cloudy mix, you know, to draw the fish in very quickly, and bait that's going to come out the feeder very quickly. And one ground bait which does this all the time, and it's got absolutely no binding power whatsoever, very, very light, is just plain, pure brown crumb. Perfect for use, and unless I'm fishing a big river that's flowing hard, this is the one that I always use in my mix, and it's usually about half of the mix. Depends, but today it probably could be 3/4 if you wanted, it wouldn't matter, because it's so shallow the bait wants to come out. But that's all down to the amount of water you put in, how dry you make the mix. I always make sure, even though they're very good products, I always make sure that I just use the riddle to just remove. Sometimes you get odd lumps of, just open that bag, odd little lumps of ground bait in there. I'll just use a fine pinky riddle. You'll see there won't be a lot, but just to, in its dry state, just to riddle that. And you can see now already, there's a few, can you see a few? There's even an odd little bit of paper, no extra charge for that in there, but those odd little lumps, I don't want them today. They're quite biggish pieces, and they will probably float up, and I don't really want that. So I've removed those, get those out of the way. So that's the brown crumb. And the other one, another one of my favourites, is Vandenine bream. This is just a beautiful ground bait. I think bream are the main target species. So I'm using some Vandenine bream. Got loads of good additives for actually getting bream in your peg. So some bream, and I'll do the same with that as well. Into the riddle, the dry contents. There'll be odd little bits, larger pieces that I don't really want. I want a very, very light, sort of fluffy mix. There's a little bit of hemp in there which I don't really want in it. So once again, the dry contents. There's a little bit of maize. I'll probably run my hand through that just to push 1 or 2 little bits of maize through. That's right, and there you see there's a few bigger lumps that are not really necessary. Get rid of that. Bird's going to have that. Now I'm going to mix these dry contents thoroughly. The good thing is they're 2 different colours, so you can actually see when you're mixing them. Always before, just mix the dry contents very thoroughly. There you are. And then I'm going to show you my real secret. There you are, that's that. And the secret is brasem. This is in its liquid form. You can get it in powdered or liquid. This is liquid brasem. And I discovered this years ago when watching a famous German angler, Wolfgang Kremkes, using this in Ireland. He actually won the festival, but it's a beautiful sweet smell, perfect for bream. I'm going to add that to the water I've got a tub of water, so before I put the water into there, I'm going to add this liquid brasem to the water. So you can just squirt that in. There's a fair bit. I've probably put a quarter of that tub in there. Look, you can see how much that was a full tub, and I've probably put quarter into sort of 2 pints of water. And then, so there you've got this lovely, that is beautiful. That is so sweet smelling and gorgeous. And I've got that to add now, and very, very carefully, I want a really light mix. So when you add this water, really, really carefully, add it in and use your hands to agitate as much as you can to get that water into the dry contents. And always add the water very, very slowly. It's very, very easy to put more water in, but of course once you overdo it, you can't take it out. So be very, very careful about how much you do. And you want to add the water and then leave it. Leave it for about 15 minutes, come back, check it. And as I say, I want a very dry mix today. The drier the mix, the faster it will cloud out of the feeder. If it's wet, it will stay stuck in there. You don't want that, because we've got a very shallow peg, so it wants to come out quickly. I'm just going to leave that now, then add more water, and I'll show you how to riddle it off. So, what exactly is feeder fishing? Well, I don't even know who thought of it. It was probably the late 70s, but another brilliant idea from an angler, where you can get a small amount of feed, and here is one of the feeders, probably similar to the one I'll be using today, but pack that with ground bait and goodies. Today it'll be chopworm and caster, and it enables you to fish at distance with a rod, say 40-50 metres out into a lake, and bream, which we're going for today, tend to be a little bit further out, but enables you to get a small package of food very, very accurately. You can set a line clip on your reel so that you cast exactly the same distance each time. You pick a marker on the far bank, so every time that feeder falls in the same spot. And this is what I always say about fishing, that's the secret, that's feeding. So accuracy, a very, very tight dinner table of food for those fish to come into, so that means you just catch more fish, everything's concentrated. So that's feeder fishing, a parcel of food, and that is reasonably close to the hook. I'll sort of empty that, I'll show you how to do it later. But first of all, when you get to the lake, you look at a wide expanse of water and you think, well, how deep is it? Where am I going to fish? Where are the clear bits? So what I always do to start is I actually use a little Arsley bomb on the rod, say a 3/4 ounce Arsley bomb, to sort of, when you're plumbing with a pole, you search round to find out the different depths. Well, I do the same with a bomb. You cast it out and you check how long it takes for the actual tip, as you cast out, for the tip to come back. So you search the peg, search the peg, search the peg. And it's same, it's plumbing up with a bomb. You need to know where you're fishing. So I've already picked roughly where I want to fish, which is probably 45 or 50 metres out. A nice clearish area, but it's very, very shallow. So, and I knew that. I cast out with a lead, cast out, and the tip didn't come back. So I knew immediately it was very, very shallow. Normally you can count through one. If it's 10 foot deep, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and about usually a count of 6 with a 3/4 ounce bomb, and it's 10 foot deep. It's experience. But today I cast out, boom, it was there immediately, so I know it's very, very shallow. But always cast around with a bomb, find out where you're going to fish. Now I've just finished the ground bait off. I actually added a little bit more water to it and then put it through an ordinary maggot riddle, and that's important because as you add water to ground bait, you get odd bigger lumps which are wetter and drier. The drier stuff goes straight through. You need to mix those two together, and the result is this, and it's a very, very light, soft mix that's going to come out of the feeder really easily, but a very, very light mix. But it's always important, you must riddle a ground bait. Once you think you've got it right, run it through a riddle, and then you get this lovely even texture of water all the way through. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the middle of this ground bait, we call it blocking off, but I'm going to put a mixture of chopped worm and casters. So I've already chopped some worms up, quite a gruesome job actually chopping worms up, so I've already done them, just to stop you girls from screaming. There are a few chopped worms. I'm going to mix a lot of casters in with that. And mix a lot of casters in with that. Bream love casters, so I'm going to mix some casters in there. And each cast I'm going to put a good helping, probably that much each cast, which goes in the middle of the feeder and then blocked off either end with ground bait. So that's going to be the feed. Loads of particles in the middle of ground bait. The ground bait bursts out and reveals all of this as well. So all the time we're packing feed, and it doesn't take long to put 2 pints of that particle feed into your peg. Straight in. One of these, and it's definitely one of these big bream. Just exactly what I've come for today. Quite difficult fishing because it's shallow, but I started off like when you're feeder fishing, you want to get a few casts. So what I did before we got actually going, I cast about probably 10 times very quickly just to get a nice feed area. And then put 4 maggots on the hook, cast, left it, and the tip just went whizzing round. And these are good, it's very shallow water, and these are good, hard fighting bream. You see that tip is really banging. Oh. Lovely fish. I fished here once before, and I remember then the bream I caught were fabulous, really good quality and big fish. Here it comes, just coming round on the surface now. Lovely big bream. This is what feeder fishing is all about. Nice big powerful bream as well. Look at that, look at the size of that one. Lovely fish, you can see the 4 maggots sticking out of its mouth. Big, oh dear, so much power. You can usually pick bream up like that, just pick them up on the heads, that's what I usually do. Probably about £3 that one. Lovely bite, tip went round. What a good start to the day. As I said, a few feederfuls, and what I've done, I've actually picked a marker on the far bank so that you know that you're actually casting in the same spot every time. Hold the rod vertical back, and then just a good cast. It actually hits the line clip so that you know it's exactly the same distance. So if you pick a marker on the far bank, you go to your clip every time the feeder is in the same spot. So that bream is waiting there, not from that feeder full that you've just thrown out, but from the one before. That's the real secret. You know, it's on the food already, waiting to take it. And then what I do is, once the feeder hits the bottom, it's very, 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 very shallow. I just move the feeder a little bit back towards me. Back towards me, so the feeder empties. I'm just emptying the feeder and then pulling the hook bait. If you can imagine it, you empty the feeder and you pull the hook bait back to where all the contents have come out of the feeder as well. I'm into another one. Oh, this is great fishing. Once the breams settle on that feed, you know, because I put those 10 feederfuls in quickly, once they settle on that, then it becomes easier. You know, you've got a nice tight dinner table for the fish. It becomes easy to catch them. Now you noticed I hardly struck on that one. The reason was I'm using braid. always when I'm feeder fishing at distance, I like to use braid, and this one is about probably 0.7mm diameter. Now you imagine that in normal line, 0.7mm, so it's really fine. But it's got no stretch, so you connect immediately with the fish without any problem. You're straight into the fish, and when you want to move your feeder, you know, when your feeder hits the bottom, you want to move it, you just pull it along. You can move it very easily. Who said bream don't fight? This is brilliant. Really see it banging away on the tip. Lovely, really powerful fish. I love, people think I'm just a pole angler, but I love feeder fishing. It's so shallow out there too that the bream very, very quickly come to the top. Oh, I've got a little swan coming to see me. I hope swans don't eat bream. Lovely, just bringing it around. It's a good fish. It's incredible once you get the fish there. Oh, look at that, I love it. I bet it's a beauty. Once you get the fish on the feed, you know, bream are a shoal fish, and you can catch loads of them. Oh, lovely. That's a beautiful fish. Probably getting on for £4, that one. You've just got the signs just on the top of the head, the signs of spawning nodules, just these little white marks. They're not ready to spawn yet because the water's too cold, but they're just preparing for that. Lovely fishing. Hooked. And sometimes they do take the hook down a bit. And what I do, you know, if a fish takes a hook down, don't try and dig it out. You can actually just cut the line. Much better to cut the line. I'm using a barbless hook, and that will get rid of it quite easily. Beautiful bream. What a lovely start. Remember, important thing, just pick that marker on the far bank so that you're casting accurately to it every time. You've got your line clip set. Bang, dead in line with that little green tree there. Feeder hits straight away. Actually, as soon as it hit the bottom, I had indication from probably a roach. Real fast bite it was. And then once your feeder's hit the bottom, you're using this braid so you can easily just pull the feeder along a bit. That will empty the feeder and pull your hook bait into it. The problem is it's so shallow the fish comes straight to the top, you know. I flick that anti-reverse off so when those fish surge away you can actually backwind. Like normally when I'm fishing I'll have that backwind on, I can actually backwind so when the fish runs off so I can actually backwind. It's just real dead weight. And then net it. Oh, this one. Oh, this one actually is quite an old fish. Some fish, you know, most of the fish we've caught today have been these golden ones, but this one's one of these. Well, it's almost black. Just a black fish. Oh dear. Beautiful fish though. real heavy fish, but an old one. You can see by the colour it's an old fish. Even got a small lice on the back there, but really probably one of the original stock fish. Oh, look at that swan. I told you it was shallow here. Look, that's actually on my feed. Can you believe that? He's got his head right down. I thought it was only about 3 feet deep, and I'm not far out. How can I move it? Let's hope it has enough in a minute and goes. Look at it. My lovely bed of feed that I've put down. Still won't disturb the fish though. The only thing I'm worried about is it's going to eat my food that I've put down. I'm into another one of these big bream already. Lovely bite too. Tip just went. That's the beauty of braid. Just you hardly need to strike. Just pick up the rod and you're into the fish. It's amazing that. Swans there, stealing my bait, and still those bream come in. They must be hungry. Or else the food I'm giving them is really good. I think that's probably the reason. Now I've actually got, and I'm using braid, I'm using a mono shock leader or shock absorber. It's a length of line, 6 metres long, that you can put all your paternoster rig and your feeder, you can fix it to it. And then when you're casting off of mono, not off of the braid. And also when you get the fish under your foot and it's like jagging away under your feet, like just down there ready to net, you've got the give of mono. Braid has got virtually no stretch whatsoever. This fish is coming in nicely. Oh, it's a lovely one of those, just saw it top, one of those big golden bronze bream, hooked perfectly. Even now I can see there is, oh, this is a cracking fish. Who said these bream? Oh, a lovely fight. Right on the top. Can you believe that? Those swans in there taking my feed, and still probably the bream thought, oh, I'm not going to let them get away with that, I want some. But of course it took the one with my hook in it. 4 red maggots, lovely big beautiful looking bronze bream. Just bring him in, net him carefully. I can see the hook coming out of his mouth, so it's hooked perfectly. Some more of those sort of spawning nodules, little marks on their heads. Hey, this is a beautiful fish, this one. Lovely, lovely condition. Look at that. I think what I'll do is I'll put this one away and then I'll run through the feeder rig, you know, because it's very, very important how you set up the feeder, the hooks and everything that you use. So it's hooked absolutely perfectly. Look at that. 3.5 pound, beautiful bronze bream. The feeder. As I said, I was going to explain the exact rig I use. Now, it varies depending on, this is a still water situation. And in this case, in still water, I like to use what's called a paternoster rig. And coming up from the feeder to the main line there, I've got probably 10 inches. 10 inches, and then I've got a 4-turn water knot, which actually goes off here, actually stands off. If you can just see it there, stands off, and I've got another length of line which connects down to a very, very small barrel swivel. It's a number 30 barrel swivel. I connect that with a tucked half blood, just a tiny swivel. I like to have that. Now notice the length that I've got on this extra piece of line. Now this line is exactly the same diameter as the main line. It's 0.22 millimetre, this piece of line. It's always much stronger if you've got 2 lines of equal diameter. You know, try not to have a thick to thin situation. So I've got two lines there, exactly the same, and make sure that this little swivel goes past the feeder. This prevents tangles. Now from there, I then like to use just a normal high-tech hook length, the same as you would on a pole. From there, I've got probably about 2 foot of 0.5 0.15 millimetre, that's something like 4.5 pound breaking strain, so it's strong. This 0.22 millimetre is probably something like 10 pound breaking strain, with loads of power. And I've got quite a long hook length, so say about 2 foot of mono down to the hook, and there you can see just a very, there's the hook, 0.15 millimetre. The hook is a 14, it's a B560, a camisand hook, strong, wide gape. I'm putting 4 maggots on. There's a lot of little roach here, so you want a nice big hook, fill it with maggots just to help avoid the roach, give the bream a chance to get in. So that's basically it. Now if you look at the total length of the hook length, it's something well over 1 metre in length. You know, so it's a fair bit away from the feeder itself, so I can empty the feeder and I can actually then pull the feeder through the water and drag this hook length behind it, so that the actual bait goes in all the ground bait that's pouring out of the feeder, so it's right there when the bream sort of grab it. When you get that sort of fast bite is when you get this cloud of ground bait and they're straight in. So that's the actual paternoster rig, and from there we can go on to exactly how to tie these knots, because they're very important. If you look at that paternoster rig, can you see how the line there stands off there? I'm holding the main line here, and this actual line will stand off, and this is what prevents tangles. You can cast it all day long and never get a tangle. Very simple. I've also, down onto the feeder there is a small link swivel. When you're feeder fishing, you may need to change the feeder. You may need to put a big one on, small one on, lighter feeder, and just unclip that link, clip another feeder on, no problem at all. Once again, the same knot there, that tucked half blood, a really good secure knot. These new reel lines are fantastic. I mean, this one I'm using today is 0.22 millimetre diameter. It's a Browning feeder line, and it breaks at 12 pound breaking strain. Now if you compare that, go back to some of the, I mean, I always used to use Maxima. Go back to those days, 5 pound Maxima was the same diameter, half the breaking strain. You know, much weaker. So this, you can cast much more, a lot more effort into it. The 4-turn water knot. Imagine that this here is a length of main line. I've taken a piece off now. If possible, always use the actual piece that I'm going to do, going to the actual hook length. Always try and use the same diameter line. Remember, different diameters, it's not as strong. So try and use the same diameter. So 2 pieces of line, I've cut a piece off, a 4-turn water knot. You lay the 2 pieces of line together. You've got a piece which is going to your hook length. Now what you do, your thumb and your first finger there, trap the 2 pieces and form a loop with your 2 fingers there. So you get, I've formed a loop and I've trapped it again. Now this piece here, this is a piece that actually, this is piece of the main line. That's going down to the feeder, right? Now what you've got to do is pull this through. It's 4-turn water knot, so you've got to pull that piece and a little tag through 4 times. 1. And every time you pull it through, you have to sort of trap it again with your finger. 2. And your thumb. Just pull it through. 3. Hope you can see that. Knots are so important in fishing. You know, if you don't get your knots right, what happens is you strike and it breaks, and you always say, oh, that was a big fish. But usually it isn't. It's usually the knot that's failed you. So then, what I've done there is a 4-turn water knot. Now you need to wet that. So I'm just going to wet my fingers, pull it down, pull the 2 pieces together, like that. Pull them together, nice and tight. You need then to pull on that tag there. Just pull on that tag, just to tighten the whole knot up. Just pull on that tag. That will get the knot tight. Pull it down. Then if I show you, I'll hold the knot up. If you can see, the piece that's going down to the hook length, you will see how it actually stands up. The way that I've tied it actually stands up. Can you see how it's lifting up and away? There's the feeder, there's what I'm holding down there, and the piece that's pulling away there, let's get the rest of that line out of the way, I haven't cut that tag off, but that's standing, it's going up towards the rod tip. That stops it tangling. And then just trim off that little tag and you've got a perfect knot. Right, a tucked half blood. This is the knot that I use to connect the barrel swivel and the link swivel. So it's exactly the same knot. You've got the small swivel. I've just got a length of ordinary main line there. And this is a simple knot, but you do need to think about it, you know, because if you don't do it correctly, your line can slip between the two. So you've got your barrel swivel. All you do is 5 turns with this little tag here. 5 turns round. So I'm holding the barrel swivel and I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you got that. So there's the barrel swivel and there's a twisted line. I'm actually holding the swivel. Can you see? I'm just holding that swivel there. There's a big loop of line there. See that one there? You've got to bring that little tag through that loop, right? Now that then is just a normal half blood, but then you've got to tuck it, and this is where the strength of the knot comes in. So we're through. So I'm going to show you that little sequence there. I've put it through that piece. Can you see that? It's just gone through. And I've got to tuck it. I've now formed another loop here. Can you see that there? I've got to actually tuck that line back through there. That is then a tucked half blood. So I'm tucking it back, holding it. Ever so hard to do these, aren't they? Just a teeny bit of moisture on it, just to hold it. Pull it tight, just a tuck, it'll pull down there. And there, what a beautiful, just have a look at that, what a beautiful neat knot you get. Once again, you've got that little tag, just pull that little tag off, but incredibly strong. Pull that as hard as you want, you won't break it. And another knot I must show you, of course, is how to attach the mono shock leader to the braid itself. And look at that braid, 0.04 millimetre it says. It's not that actually, they cheat a bit when they talk about diameters. That is actually 0.07, which is still incredibly fine. You know, 0.7 millimetre, you imagine that as your finest hook length, 5 pound breaking strain. But what they do when they measure these fibres is they measure each little fibre, and of course there's airspace in between, so it's never exactly as they state on the actual label. But 0.7 millimetre, that's why it's so good for casting, you know, because it's very, very thin. That's why, and it's got no stretch, that's why you connect straight through to the fish. Now, it is a simple knot, this one. Right, all you do is you form and do a normal overhand loop, a figure of an 8 overhand loop. So, the end of the line, you fold over like that. Now this is a figure of 8 loop. You turn this loop round in your hand, like that, okay? Have you got that? So you can see this coming up, you can see this turn. Now this piece here, you must get a figure 8, has to go away from you. Has to go away from you like that. And you actually pull it back, so you come back round and pull it back through. And I'll show you this, and you'll get this figure of 8 in a moment. You'll see where it comes from. Now can you see how you've almost there got a figure of 8? That's when you know that you've tied it correctly. Once again, just wet the knot a little bit, just pull it up, just wet it a little bit, pull it tight. And can you see how small that knot is? Just a tiny knot there. Very tiny. Trim the surplus off very close. But that's a figure of 8, overhand loop, figure of 8. That's perfect then, really strong. That's on your braid on the line. Now, that other knot that I showed you, which was the tucked half blood, when you've got your mono, just put it through there, twist it round 5 times, right? push it through and tuck it, so you've got a tucked half blood to your mono, so the same knot as you've used on those little barrel swivels. Trim it off, you've got a perfect knot, it will not break. Let's get back to some fishing. Now you'll be amazed how much food I'm actually putting in there. Look at that, a load of casters, bits of worm, can you see little bits of chopped worm? What I'm doing is I'm actually putting that inside the feeder itself. I'm actually getting those and putting them inside, can you see them going in there? As many as I can of those inside the feeder. So it's virtually all particles, and then just blocking it off either side with some crumb. And just a little gentle squeeze, that will come out immediately because it's nice, light crumb. I put 4 red maggots on the hook. Fish have had a bit of a rest actually while I've been tying knots, but let's have a look. And then just, once again, look at your target, look at where you're going to cast. And then a good, just a steady cast. The bream might be better now they've had a bit of a rest. You're on a line clip, there's no problems. Exactly in the right spot. And I actually leave my anti-reverse over ready to strike. And as soon as it settles, that little bit of movement again, just draw the feeder back towards you. This is where braid is an advantage, because you've got no stretch, you can move the feeder so much easier. Indication straight away on that tip, that's a roach. I'm not hitting that, that's not a line bite. Quite often you get bites like that, and they're line bites. And that's one thing when you're bream fishing, you have to distinguish between line bites, and usually a bream bite is a good positive bite where the tip will go straight round. But that was a little roach bite. I'm just moving that feeder again just to see if the roach is still there. Because obviously if there's a little roach and it's hanging on to that maggot, then the bream won't take it. Another little flick there. They're definitely roach. See all those little fast ones? It's definitely roach bites. And I'm resisting the temptation to hit them because I want bream. But it'll probably take a couple of casts now, because I haven't been fishing for a little while, just to get the bream back in again. You'll be amazed how quickly they'll mop up. Little roach bite there. But I wanted to come back in anyway, because I knew it'd need 2 or 3 more. Just 2 or 3 more casts with that feed, the same as I showed you just now, before you get the fish there. Just you can tell it's a roach bite, the bait's just been damaged, but because I'm using a big bait, 4 maggots, you know, it deters the roach getting on the hook. If I was using 1 or 2 maggots, I'd be hooking little roach all the time, but 3 and 4 maggots does tend to deter those smaller fish. More feed, all the time more feed. You can put you can probably put 2 or 3 pints of casters through a feeder, you know, if you're fishing during the day. If you look at that lead, can you see that lead I'm using on the feeder there? The actual feeder itself is what they call a microporous feeder. It's a browning, microporous. It actually soaks up all the flavours, but the lead is a flyer lead. It's heavier at the front than it is at the back. It tends to get, you know, a much straighter cast with this type of lead. So good for casting. And that's what you need to do. Keep repeating your casts, going out, repeating your casts, getting some food in your peg. Boom. Exactly the right spot every time. And immediately, that was a roach bite immediately. I actually took it on the drop. Big bait on. And I know what's happened. What's happened is, because, little tiny roach this, but because I haven't been fishing for a little while, because I've stopped fishing and not putting any feed in, that's the result, a little roach. Hey, what did I say about a little roach not being able to eat 4 maggots? Look at that greedy little thing. He's took 4 maggots on the drop. A few more casts and I'll get some more bream there. You need to just keep casting, keep some feed going in. We want to get those bream back again now, so it'll probably take 3 or 4 casts. Just make sure every time it's going in the same spot. So the bream are there from the feeder full before. Now that when roach are there, you can tell the bream are not there, and immediately I had a roach bite then as it went in. It's still there, flicking away at it. So I need to put some more feed in. Don't leave it out there too long. More feed, that tip's wiggling and waggling, and must be hundreds of fish out there. But it's just these small roach at the moment. But as soon as those bream move in, but this is typical. But the sort of, what you have to do is detect what are bites and what aren't bites. Another small roach. Oh, these are greedy fish. Look at that. A little tiny roach. Probably only 2 ounces, that one. What you have to detect, those little movements that you're getting. That between that and line bites. Usually once line bites are a bit slower. The movements are slower. They're not the fast actions of a roach. And you just have to detect the difference. So each time I'm putting a good helping of those casters, blocking them off. We call it blocking off. Nice long tail there. Bream are they're quite shy fish, and they tend to sort of stay back from the feeder a bit. That's another roach. Immediately I went in then. Another roach. Loads of action, but the wrong fish at the moment. It's just because I left that swim alone for a little while. Catching fish these roach as fast as you would on a pole. Little roach. Just got to wait till those, look at that, little tiny fish, 4 maggots. And that massive 14 hook. Oh dear. It's all action today. Even though I'm casting in the same place, the advantages with braid are the fact that you can cast a good distance. I'm casting sort of 40 or 50 metres into the lake. But another one of the real advantages with braid are the fact because it's got absolutely no stretch. You see every little movement, every little bite, even from roach. You sort of get the flickers and the twists and the pulls. The bream bites are just fantastic. So you can actually read what's happening out in the water. So I'm looking, I can actually see a roach bite there, a little flicker, a little pull. But the bream bites, it takes it right round, takes the tip right round, and they're just unmissable, the bream bites. And you can tell exactly what's happening. That's because braid has no stretch. So as soon as that fish pulls on the other end, you get an indication this end. You get a flicker, a pull. Always get little signs, just little twitches and pulls. You can't try and read them. And the bream bite, what happens is the tip just goes right round. Really good pull. Because they're bigger fish. Because there's no stretch, you get a real positive bite and then you just lift into the fish. Don't strike, just lift straight into the fish. Another little flick there. But these are just little roach bites, so it just wants to come in now. A small roach. These are a bit of a nuisance really, these small fish. Just a nuisance, but as soon as they disappear, look at that. Little flickers, but I'm fishing at 40 to 50 metres and you can still hit these bites. Still hit these roach bites from that distance. A 2 or 3 ounce roach from all that way. Just shows you how good braid is. Keep the feeder rod up straight, out to the line clip, down. So every time it's going in the same spot and building up that feed. Oh, immediately there's a roach. Immediately there's a roach. Took it on the drop. I'm going to try, hopefully I'm going to hope it lets go. Sometimes they just bite one maggot. Because I've got 4 on there I can leave it. And hopefully then a big bream will move in. But they're going mad. It's probably this, I mean we've been fishing 3 or 4 hours now, this afternoon sunshine. Still getting indications, still just those little slight movements. They're roach, that was a better bite, roach again. I can actually read it, that's the beauty of braid, you can read everything. I'm looking for that big bream bite, the proper bite. It's incredible how, you know, when you're looking at that tip is what is the indication you get from the fish, and you actually, you're visioned in just on that tip. That's signalling everything that's happening in your peg. It's amazing how you just sort of get totally fixed on what's going on. Look, the tip's just going round now, a little bit of a bite. I'm trying to read the bites, but there's a lot of roach. I think it might be a good idea. I mean, the sun's come up now, it's getting warmer. Probably these bream have backed off a bit. Might be a good idea to go over to a lighter rod, lighter line, and perhaps smaller hook and target these roach. Just see if we can catch quite a few of these roach. All the time now I'm getting, the tip is non-stop, this with roach. So let's have a go for roach. This is incredible. I thought what I'd do is just switch rigs, as I said, and try and come in a little bit closer and just catch these roach. The bream have died down a bit because it's very warm now. There's sort of 3 and 4 ounce roach in every cast. What I've done, I've got a smaller, look at that, smaller hook, an 18 hook, 2 maggots. Roach love that. A lighter feeder rod, a nice, this is a 12-foot feeder rod, but a lovely slim blank. Got my name on it too, it's a Bob Nudd feeder rod. Browning, of course. Would I use anything else? And what I've done is, I've just scaled everything down. A lighter tip, a smaller rod, feeder much lighter, coming closer, you know, just for a little bit of fast action. The same paternoster rig. Everything's identical except I'm using all line. I'm in fairly close, I'm not using any braid, so I've got an 017 Browning feeder line all the way through. And then exactly the same rig, slightly shorter tail. And all I'm doing is putting a few casters in with the same crumb, casting in the same spot, a bit, as I said, a bit closer in to where I was before. This is a beautiful light feeder rod, 1 ounce tip and out, but the feeder's hardly settling, you know, it's going in. I've got a nice long tail, putting the rod in the rest, and the tip's rattling round straight away. I think I missed that one. There's just so many fish out there. The other rod I was using actually was quite a heavy one. It was like a 13-foot Browning again, with a 1.5 ounce tip, but when you're casting a long way you do need a rod with more power through the middle, you know, so you can really punch the feeder out. This one is just a lovely medium feeder, beautiful and light to use, and it's sort of like the fast racy. This is what happens with roach, you get loads and loads of bites as you go in. with the feeder as it hits bottom. As soon as it hits bottom, the roach are on it. It's a smaller hook. Remember, I was using a 14 with 4 maggots. I still caught roach on it, but it deterred them a little bit. But this 18 hook, oh, they love that. They're onto that straight away. And all the time, there's signs. I'm only using like the feeders about a half ounce feeder. Fish are there all the time, rattling, moving. Loads and loads of little fish out there. It's too many really, I'm getting too many bites now. And that was amazing. Look at that bait. Really ragged and pulled and chewed. That's how mad they're going. I was too busy talking, that's the trouble, to worry about striking, but look at that. Just remnants of 2 maggots there. But this is what happens. I mean, it is the time of day. I just looked out there, and where I'd put my stuff earlier, a big bream has just rolled. So perhaps they are still about. I'm going to stay on later and actually try and catch some, I think. Just when it cools down a bit, because it's an incredibly warm day. Absolutely beautiful. Just once again, just like the bream, keep putting the feeder in the same spot, and then in the end you get loads and loads of roach. You know, they all gather round that one spot, and the more you throw in, the more bites you'll get. It's just incredible fishing these roaches sort of every cast. As soon as it goes in, as soon as the feeder hits the bottom, because that ground bait is clouding up. It's a little bit of a smaller hook. Look at that, another lovely little roach. Look at that, it's probably only 1.5 ounces. It's one of the smaller specimens. Look at that ground bait all over my hand. Chewed up maggot, sticking just out of its mouth. So it's taken one of the maggots. Really aggressive feeding. Lovely little fish though. But every cast I'm going in, even with a feeder, you know, you can catch a lot of these sort of fish quickly. Look at my feeder box, what a mess. But it's practical, you know, every feeder in there has a use. And this one is what I've been using today. This is a microporous feeder. What it is, it's got millions of tiny little holes, so if you want to actually dip this in your, say, your favourite liquid, you can actually dip your feeder in that. The actual smell will soak into the feeder, and even though the ground bait goes out of the feeder, the smell still remains. So microporous, it's a browning one, and on the back you actually get the size. It's a 20 gram weight there, so it's a 20 gram microporous feeder. Some feeders, now this particular one, got no holes at all. It's a speed feeder. If you have a look at that lead, can you see how that's sort of at the front end, that's for the casting weight. No holes, that means, with no holes, it means that, say you're in a snaggy peg, this feeder will lift off the bottom very, very quickly because there's no holes. As you strike, the water will rush through here and lift the feeder off the bottom very quickly. You imagine a feeder with all holes, water rushing through, has got no lifting power. So snaggy pegs, where you want your feeder to come to the top very, very quickly, use a feeder without any holes. That's a good one. There's also the opposite to that. Told you I'd got loads. This is a cage feeder, and it's exactly what it says it is. It's a cage. This one is where you have a nice clean swim and you want your bait to come out very, very quickly because it's all holes, so the bait really smashes out of there quickly, but no lifting power at all. So beware of that. If the bottom's not clean at all, beware of using that. You want to use this on a sort of a hard gravelly bottom where it will move easily. No lifting power in that at all. This sort of feeder is favoured a lot by Dutch anglers. There's another one I've got here, which is a Nisa feeder. I've actually, let's have a look. Let me try to to get a proper one. There's the one with normal holes in it there. That's a Nisa feeder. It's called Nisa because that's the manufacturer, but a nice flat weight on the bottom, clearly marked, 44 grams, 1.5 ounces. That's more for river fishing. It's quite a heavy feeder. It's got a good flat bottom on it. Some holes, so more for river type fishing. Then you've got a normal maggot feeder. There, I've got some extra weights on that one. This is where I've been fishing it in a river probably, but this is a maggot feeder. In other words, you lift this top off, block end or maggot, you put your maggots in there and they crawl through the holes. Normal, this is called a Drennan black cap maggot feeder. So you don't use any ground bait in that, that's just purely either for maggots or hempen casters, any sort of just purely particles. So there are just a few of the feeders that I use. Obviously there's a lot more, and they're different sizes. You know, sometimes you need a big feeder to get plenty of ground bait in, other times a really small one. And you quite often need to chop and change your feeder size depending on how the fish are feeding. So you have to work that out. Normally, quite often you can fish a big feeder in the beginning, and then as the fish die and fade a bit, then you go on to a smaller feeder. I'm into a bream. Do you know what, I said I might catch one on this short line. I didn't think for a minute I would. Been going in and catching roach after roach. I've just got in with this light feeder rod. Tip goes round straight away on the drop. Definitely a bream. That's incredible. You know, it's really, the sun's up high. It's amazing how even these fish will come. I didn't think, I'm casting probably on this short line only about 30 metres. I didn't think for 1 minute these fish would come in this close. I've only got an 18 hook on here, 2 maggots. Just shows you these fish will actually move in, bully out the roach. Lovely bream. Beautiful fishing. Got 2 pals as well. Look, a swan either side of me and a big bream coming up the middle. Just coming, you know, that I'd just thrown out, that ground bait had come out immediately out of the feeder. Look at that, it's 2 maggots, one of the maggots blown up the line. This one didn't like that. And the other one just in the fish's mouth. What a lovely day's fishing. I've had all the excitement of everything. And look at that. Another lovely fish, but on the roach line. They're probably there now on that roach line, so you just don't know. It just shows you what you can achieve. You know, feeder fishing, good accurate casting, getting that bed of feed in. Just slip that one back in the net. Getting that bed of feed in that tight area so the fish will move on to it. It just shows you what you can achieve. And eventually they've moved in on the roach line, so I don't know what to do now. I don't know whether I'm going to fish on anyway. I don't care if the camera goes. I'm going to fish on and try and catch another one.